Members, we have a quorum, and we've reached the appointed hour. Welcome to the meeting of the PWSC. In the session 2013-14, as at last meeting, we approved 19 projects amounting to $58.445 billion, among which capital works items amounted to $54.6941 billion. Today, we will continue to study the outstanding items. For the meeting 27th of May, there are 6 of them, and the total amounts to $9.1744 billion. If all funding proposals are approved, then the accumulated number of approved items will be 25, and the total amount $67.6194 billion, among which capital works projects will amount to $63.8685 billion. In the remaining sessions, excluding the 6 items today, the administration expects that there will be 19 projects for this committee's approval, and the amount involved is expected to be $15.2582 billion. I'd like to remind members that if you have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest in respect of the items to be discussed today, please declare your interest before you speak according to ROP 83A. I'd like to draw members' attention to ROP 84, which is related to voting under direct pecuniary interests. The first item to be dealt with today, Head 705, Civil Engineering, PWSC 2014-15, number 943 CG, Greening Master Plans for the New Territories. The paper proposes to upgrade part of 43 CG according to money of the day prices, $350 million for Greening Master Plan for NT Southeast and Northwest Priority Greening Works. The Works panel have been consulted on the 25th of March, and members generally support the proposal. To answer members' questions, we have the Director of Civil Engineering and Development, Mr. Hon Chi-Kang, the Deputy Head of Civil Engineering Office, Mr. Robin Lee, and Senior Landscape Architect, Ms. Lillian Yu. Right. If you want to speak, please press the button. I see Mr. Wong Kok Heng, 4 minutes and for questions and answers. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, with regard to the funding application, I welcomed it and I support it. Last term, I was the elected member or any elected member of NT West. Many years ago, I proposed this. When the administration came before us to seek funding for greening master plans for the urban areas, I asked why they didn't consider the new territories. After many rounds of pursuing the cause, I now see the administration comes before us to seek funding to implement the greening master plans for the new territories. I therefore welcome this. I have 2 simple questions for simple answers. In implementing the greening master plans for the new territories, I think the administration should learn more from the arborists, and they should plant more trees for people's appreciation, and they should avoid planting trees that harm the health of people. Please answer the question. Mr. Hon. Thank you, Chairman. As said by Mr. Wong, starting from 2007, we gradually completed the GMPs in the urban areas, and we've completed the planting works. We have gathered some experience. We've done quite a lot of work in different districts. And when we go back to the district councils, they generally appreciate our efforts. We will also apply the same experience to the new territories. Now we have landscape architects, we have arborists working with us, and our consultants will also get the experts in to do the work. As for trees for appreciation, if you can see the paper, we do have some themes. We have themes for different districts. It doesn't mean that we'll only plant those trees. We also have a series of trees, and we will talk to the district council, the villages, to find out what species of trees are most appropriate. I have no further questions. Mr. Fan. Well, I am a Sai Kung district councillor. The plan also covers Sai Kung district. Have you done any assessment of the small-scale, sporadic, continuous greening efforts made by the district councils or proposed by the district councils? The scale of such projects, of course, were much more smaller than this GMP. Has the administration assessed the greening in the districts? In the past, we had difficulties of greening because we had to dig up the roads, and there were utilities in the ground, and we couldn't touch them. Would you therefore take the opportunities to have detailed plans for underground utilities in the future? If you want to do more extensive planting, planting more trees at the roadsides, you won't need to do more site investigation or investigative exploration or digging. So how can you consolidate your experience and then in implementing your GMP? And there are also ancillary works. Will you take this opportunity to tidy up the underground utility plans? Mr. Han, to answer Mr. Fan's question, we are working on 4 districts. Well, we will work on 4 districts. We will first take stock of our experience in the urban areas. We will look at the local features, and we find the most suitable species for the district. Say in Sai Kung, as said by the member, the Sai Kung District Council does have sporadic planting programs. We've looked into that. Now the GMP is for the whole district. Sai Kung district is very big, it's covering Tseung Kwan O as well. We will plant at the trunk roads and also built up areas. In fact, greening is quite good in Sai Kung, but in some areas we think more can be done. We will look at the district, what the district councils had done, and we would find suitable species for suitable places. We look at the characteristics of the districts. Say if they've planted shrubs, if they have planted trees, then we'll try to fit in with the local situation. We will not fell any tree because of the GMP. As for the underground utilities, in densely populated areas, we do find we do find a lot of underground utilities, ducts and pipes. But Hong Kong is a small place. If at all possible, we'll try to earmark more space for planting. Next, Mr. Tony Chair. Thank you, Chairman. Of course, I support greening, and I support different themes for different districts. You need the arborists, the landscape architects to help you, of course. And I believe they do have such experts in their departments. Now you are working on various districts, or working in various districts, so what's your manpower situation? You need different types of expertise. First, there will be engineering works, and then followed by other specialties, and then followed by maintenance. My question is, will that be done by other departments after you finish your work? And have those departments earmark adequate manpower to do the follow-up or maintenance work? The CEDD has the relevant experts. We have landscape architects and other designers. Now, this is a large-scale project, of course, and we have therefore got consultant engineers to help us. They will provide the manpower in the design and construction stage. We play a supervisory role. We have professionals watching over their backs. I've forgotten your second question. Yes, handover and maintenance. Maintenance. There is a 1-year period or establishment period. That is our experience. Now the plants are there. The projects have been completed. Then our works team will look after the growth of these trees and plants. And then after the year, then the LCSD will step in, and they also have a professional team to do the maintenance. Can we be provided with the information? How many experts do they have to deal with these plants and trees? And what is the manpower situation of the LCSD in respect of maintaining these? I believe they do have communication. I don't have the numbers, but we can provide information after the meeting. Mr. Tam Yu Chung. Of course, we support greening. We hope to make Hong Kong more beautiful, more attractive. Many people in Hong Kong like cherry trees, or sakura in Japanese, so that people do not need to go on long trips. Well, can we plant more sakura? Well, there are many types of cherry trees. In fact, there is a special species of cherry tree in Hong Kong, and people do go to take pictures in Cheung Chau near the temple. There are some, and also in Kadori Farm, 1 or 2 cherry trees. I went there, but it wasn't blossoming at that time. Some experts suggested whether Hong Kong can plant more. We are considering that. We will try to see whether we can find some places to plant cherry trees. They need a lower temperature. Say, for example, on the mid-level slope of Kaduri Farm. Since people like it that much, even if there is just a single tree, people go there and take films, to take photos. So, yes, please take that into account. Mr. Len Leung, they are going to put a few $100 million on greening. Where do the tree seedlings come from? It's not said in the paper. How many are local species among the seedlings, and how many are foreign species? What is the ratio?
And are there any criteria for selecting the ratio, and why have you not used entirely local species, and have you asked the AFCD to help identify local species? And when you introduce foreign species to these areas, are you concerned that they might also bring in some invasive species? Because in the past we have also heard about this, because we try to plant some trees called paper bark, and as a result the soil became acidic. So what are the reasons or justifications of planting these species and also adopting the ratio between foreign and local species, Mr. Hon? Well, basically for these tree seeds, they are from the mainland, and as we just said, in the urban area, according to our experience, basically most of these species have come from the mainland. And then for local species, by that we mean that these are already native species, and if you look at the number, about 35% would be native local species, and then for 65% they would be localized species. And by that we mean, as the member just said, we have the paper bark, that is the Melaleuca capjuputa communiciana, and also these species have actually come to Hong Kong for some time, and they have been planted in some districts, and they are suitable for the local environment. And just now you also referred to this species of Melaleuca capjuputa communiciana, and I've also heard that a Taiwanese species has actually affected the soil structure. So we would listen to the experts' views as to what species are suitable for which area. So we would only plant species that are suitable for the local circumstances. For example, for Melaleuca capjuputa communiciana, actually they've been planted in many places, and they do have a great appreciation value or aesthetic value. But then please rest assured that we'll be very careful in planting the different species. Why is it that, has the AFCD got the information, and is it necessary for us to introduce so many foreign species? How about local native species? We do have many native species and plants that are available locally, and you also refer to this Taiwanese species, or acacia. Well, I don't know much about that, but then, well, I understand that, where acacia is grown, other species will find it difficult to grow. So whether it's the paperbark or Melaleuca capjuputa communiciana that you refer to, or acacia, so why do we have choose them? Is it that there are no other local species that are suitable? Well, we haven't introduced any foreign species. Either they are local native species or localized species. By localized species, actually we have checked it, and these are species that have already taken their roots in Hong Kong, for example, for paperbark and so on. Well, if you've been to the North District, then you'll find that they have been growing very successfully and satisfactorily there. And whether or not that would add to the acidity of the soil, well, we will try and find out more. But then basically we have done the research work before we select these species. Mr. Christopher Chong, well, the other member, Mr. Tam, referred to sakura blossoms. We support that, but then there are also other species, for example, four colors and so on, or maple leaves. Well, is it suitable for some of these places? Well, actually, we have found them in some parts of the New Territory, so some of them might be somewhat remotely located. Well, for the district that I know more, in Sai Kung, actually, for the acacia that you refer to, actually, they have brought some disturbance to the local residents. In fact, in the past, whether or not you've chosen the wrong species or whatever, well, have you got any plans to make adjustments so that for plants or trees that are causing or posing quite a nuisance to the local residents, do you have plans to replace them with species that are suitable for the local environment in order to minimize the disturbance or nuisance caused to the local residents? And also, do you have any planting or tree planting strategy so that you can provide some trees with greater aesthetic value? And well, in the past, you used to grow different species in the same area. So whether it's maple leaves or other palm trees or whatever, so you should be doing that in larger numbers in order to ensure that when you look at it, the clustering effect will be better. In fact, we do consider different species, and in suitable locations, we will consider planting Liquidaba formosana. So as far as I am aware, I understand that many people like maple leaves and different species of blossoms, and I know that some residents like to take pictures of maple leaves and four colors. Well, we will bear that in mind when we select these species. And we also have theme planting. For example, along Shingmen River, we will consider planting trees that would have greater appreciation value, so that when people go there, they can also have they will be able to appreciate them. And then for Taiwanese acacia, I understand that there are some concerns, and they might be growing faster, and as a result, they might not be that accommodating when it comes to other species. But then when the trees are already there, we would not suggest that they should be felled to make way for other species. But then in planting new trees and species, we will of course take into account our past experience. But how about the disturbance caused to the residents and so on? For example, if fruits fall and if they cause damage to people's clothing and so on. So can they ask for compensation from the government if they find that some of the properties are damaged by these species? Well, we will only consider the species when we are planting new trees. Well, for old trees, well, as far as I understand it, Taiwanese acacia would not cause the problems that you just referred to. But then if you do have concrete examples, do let us know after the meeting, and then I'll pass it on to the LCSD. Well, also for cotton trees and so on, that might cause allergy to some people. So will you avoid planting them, or will you make improvements? Well, sorry, please be brief because the time is up. So I think Mr. Chung is referring to acacia or Taiwanese acacia or cotton trees. Well, whether or not cotton fruits will cause allergy, I don't think there is sufficient scientific justification to support that, but then we will look into that. Yes, Mr. Wu Chi-White, well, last time when the GMP was launched, that applied to the urban areas, and we understand that there were many themes and theme planting, but then when it came to actual implementation, I don't know if you'd been to those areas with such GMPs to see how effective they have been. But then I understand that they have not been very successful in terms of the theme planting. So have you reviewed that? So for areas with GMPs, have you found out whether or not you've been able to achieve the desired effect with different species blossoming at the same time. And I understand that you're using shrubs as the main theme or backbone of such planting. So when you walk around in the urban area, very often you can find that they've become the garbage dumping ground because the management has been very poor, and also because they are shrubs, and in terms of the management and the level of care will have to be rather high, or else they would become quite an eyesore. But then, regrettably, what we have been seeing in the urban areas, when you just go out, well, probably in this area it might be better. But then, if you go a little farther, say in Kowloon, in Wan Chai, Kowloon East, and so on, under the GMP for the shrubs that are planted along the roadside, inevitably or invariably, they would narrow the pavements, and number two, they would also become trees with certain colors, but then they will also become garbage dumping grounds. So, to what extent have you learned from the experience in the urban GMP, so that the mistakes will not be repeated in the new territories? And also, as some members have said, well, when you introduced that in the urban area, we already suggested that there should be seam planting, so that appropriate trails can have seam planting. And you said that you would try to do that as far as possible, but then that would not become a guideline. So when it comes to actual implementation, things will not be like what you have pledged to do. Well, please be brief in your reply. Well, of course, we'll review the effectiveness of the urban GMP. In fact, I do go to the districts to listen to the views, and as far as the district councils are concerned, from what I've heard from them, well, they said that after the GMP, it became a facelift for the entire area. For example, Lockhart Road in Wan Chai and also Tsim Sha Tsui. So what you said was right, because we may not be able to plant many trees in different areas, and where we can plant them, we will try to do that as far as possible. But then, other than the temperature improvement as a result of tree planting, many trees do have appreciation value, and shrubs will of course have that effect. But then, in some cases, we might have to narrow the pavement in order to plant trees, and in some cases, there might also be garbage near the trees, and the LCSD will try to collect the rubbish as far as possible. But then, my experience is, if with shrubs planting or being planted there, if it looks nice, then not many people will be dumping their garbage there, because they would find it they would find the area very nice, and therefore they would be less prone to dumping their litter or garbage there. So we'll try to build some parapet near the area. Sometimes it might not have been due to people littering. Well, if we are able to fence up the area or hold up the area, then it would not be that easy to accumulate garbage. And if we can do more seam planting, we will try to do that as far as possible, and we will consult the local district council the best we can. Mr. Albert Chan, 4 minutes, including both questions and answers. 2 comments for your consideration, because we've been discussing this for years. Number 1, we have to plant more local native species. If my understanding is correct, well, the government's proposal is that you will first look at the color of the species, but then you may not attach that much importance to whether they are local native species or otherwise. For example, in Tung Chung, you try to plant more local species because for many people, they've never seen that before. But then in Tung Chung Lantau, this is a very unique species. So please try to do that as far as possible. Another species is also very special, because some have told me that for the longest veggia, I'm not very familiar with that. So is that from Australia, Madagascar, is not a local species, so it's Delonus regia. So in different districts, will you be looking for any native species that are more frequently seen in that district? So it's a unique species, and you can use that as a theme of the district. Because if you just use different colors, for example, in Central, you try to use gold, and also burgundy as the theme. Well, if you just look at the color of the trees, well, if you cannot find that in some native species, you try to replace them with foreign species. So I think we should strengthen the local characteristics by planting more local native species. Mr. Han? Yes, thank you, Mr. Chan, for your comment. Well, I have to emphasize that we have not introduced any new foreign species. We are basically using local species, and there are two types. Either they are native species or they are localized species. Well, for native species, of course, there is no objection, but then for localized species, you also cited some examples, and that's the Delonus regia. In fact, it's commonly found in Hong Kong, and when they blossom, they look really very nice. As to whether or not individual district can choose its own local species, well, in some theme planting, yes, we've been doing that. For example, in Yuen Long, for example, they've been planting paperbark, and it's been quite successful. And for Delonus regia is also very nice. And then for flame trees, they are also very good looking. And for maple trees, we also would do that. So we have to look at the microclimate of the individual district, and we also have to see if the species is suitable for the local environment. Yes, I understand your choice. But then for individual district, if you can select one species which is more representative, well, I understand that there are some indigenous species, and there are other localized species. Yes, that there can be different levels, but then if you can have one indigenous species for every district becoming your theme, that would be better.
I hope that in each district you can have some shrubs, native trees, native flowering plants. So you have local characteristics. People will be informed that there are so many beautiful native species in Hong Kong. Can you provide us with more information? Say, for example, for flowering plants, for shrubs, for trees, you can have local species as the main feature. We do have themes for each district. And before the meeting, we can provide you with the information. Next, Mr. Chen Hangpan. 4 minutes, question and answers. The GMPs are the products of long-term consultation, and the CEDD has talked to the various districts and has taken the views of the districts on board. Consultation has been done quite good, or quite well. Now you are going to plant many species, and my concern is about future maintenance and whether the LCSD is able to follow up. They have to look after quite a lot of trees and plants. Does the LCSD have the expertise to deal with so many species? Now you have consultants helping you, but will they be assisted in the future? Now, some species are invasive. If you've been to some places, now you can see that concerning a certain species, it is rather invasive. So is there any plan to replace the invasive species? Well, the LCSD is responsible for long-term maintenance. If we've to do maintenance, in fact, there is an annual allocation for doing maintenance, and the LCSD, the Lands Department, and the FESD are also provided. FEHD are also provided with some money. In the first phase, we've already handed over. I mean, in the urban area, we have already handed over the trees, and they are now doing the maintenance. They do have the expertise. They do have the resources to deal with that. We will not plant invasive species, be they plants, trees, or shrubs. Whether we will replace them, we will have to seek information. I don't have any information on replacing invasive species. Does any member wish to speak for the first time? If not, then yes, Dr. Fernando Chang, 4 minutes questions and answers together. Yes, with regard to this greening master plan, there may be some duplication. I cannot be sure about it. There may be duplication with other districts. So how do you fit in with the other greening efforts? We certainly support the GMP, and also we hope that greening will go on, but we have seen that there are quite a lot of green belts which will be converted into residential sites. You cut the trees, you remove the green belts, turn them into building plots or building lots. That goes against your GMP, isn't it? Or doesn't it? On one hand, we spend a lot of money buying trees. On the other hand, we keep cutting the trees. Is there any chance for trees being cut and then sites turn into other uses? With regard to the GMP, we have worked on it for quite some time. We do take stock of our experience. We look at the characteristics of the district. We also look at the greening efforts done by the district council or other authorities in the district. We look at it comprehensively. Concerning this GMP, which covers 4 districts, I believe Dr. Zhang understands that there is already a lot of greening in these districts, but we will focus our attention on the built-up areas and also areas frequented by tourists, and also we do planting along the roadsides. To a certain extent, we can reduce carbon emission. The GMP will take stock of the greening efforts that have been done. As for green belts turned into building sites, it really depends on the needs of the district. I think we need to find a balance. If we do need the site for putting up houses, I believe the government will look at the situation seriously before making a decision. Chairman, concerning this GMP, they will do greening, but we cannot rule out the possibility that within a short period of time, we'll have to change land use, get more land. I just want to know how the GMPs fit into the planning of other areas. Is there any chance of development concerning the areas covered by the GMPs? We focus on the built-up areas, the tourism attractions, and also roads. So they are not related to green belts. Mr. Leung Chi-Chang. Chairman, concerning the GMPs, the district councils, the panel, the development panel had discussed that there will be 2,500 tons of non-inert materials put into the landfills. Do you really need to create so much C&D waste? Another concern is the cotton trees. The cotton fibers are flying everywhere. But the GMP does not talk about dealing with these trees. The LCSD has done some work. In 3 years, 50 people complained against cotton fiber. On 14 occasions, the LCSD picked the cotton fruit. That's harmful to health, in particular those who have respiratory diseases.
究竟會唔會去對呢啲木棉樹啊，即係逐步減少？
Now, will you scale down or even remove the cotton trees? 2 questions. Now, concerning the use of inert, or rather non-inert waste, we are concerned about it because we are also responsible for handling C&D waste. We try to reduce the creation of inert and non-inert C&D waste rising from projects. 98% of the waste generated can be recycled, and that is quite an amount of non-inert materials, despite the fact that the scale is, despite the percentage is small, the scale of the project is big. Well, I did heard about the cotton fibers affecting the health of people. We've talked to experts. Basically, their advice is different. This is a matter of impression rather than fact. According to medical data, there is no such decision. There is no such conclusion. The departments concerned have dealt with the complaints. I will refer this to the department. If the tree is there, if you want to cut it because of this, I think that's quite problematic. They did pick the cotton fruit. Will you take that into account, and will you provide resources to do that? We are not going to plant any cotton tree. We are not going to plant any cotton tree. So maintenance of the existing tree, it is the responsibility of the LCSD.
當然咧，即係呢個新界綠化總綱圖咧，唔同區咧做咗好長時間嘅諮詢。
Well, Dr. Quat. Well, the local people support that. I therefore support it. there are GIC sites, or rather there are sites owned by the government, earmarked for green belt, earmarked for recreation or other purposes. Because of lack of resources, it is just a bare plot of land and covered by a place for breeding mosquitoes. That's a headache. In fact, these plots are suitable to be included in the GMPs. You may have to wait 20 years to turn that plot into a park, according to government schedule. Why can't they be included in your GMPs? So when you implement your GMP, please do take into account such sites and try to green these areas as well. In the summer, most of the complaints come from mosquito breeding beneath the trees or in areas covered by shrubs. People are therefore quite people don't like that. So you try to plant suitable species so that the mosquitoes will not breed.
Director. All right, to answer Ms. Squat's questions, well, under the GMP, we have also selected what you just said. That is, we have chosen some district GIC sites. There might be long-term use being planned, but then for the time being, we haven't got the work schedule for the project to be implemented. We have chosen some of those sites, and depending on the districts concerned, well, later on, when we implement the plan, we will also be consulting the local district councils, and they can make the suggestions where possible and feasible. We'll try to do that as far as possible. And then on your second question, whether or not for shrubs, will they be mosquito breeding grounds? In fact, we have done that in many urban areas. What we have heard complaints about garbage being accumulated there, but then for mosquito breeding, we have not heard that yet. Basically, it's a question of irrigation and draining, and if both are done properly, then that should not be the breeding ground for mosquitoes. I'm sure the LCSD will be paying a lot of attention to that. As regards mosquito repelling species, what we will consider that, well, in Mount Shan, the mosquito or the OV index is very high, and we have received a lot of complaints saying that near the residential developments in some green belts, they have planted some big leaf vegetation, and that would also become mosquito breeding grounds. Yes, well, you might be right in saying that that might have to do with draining. But then I do hope that you can pay more attention to that, so that after greening, if we have such problems, then that would be quite a headache. Yes, it's about maintenance. Next, Emily Lau, 4 minutes, please. Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, of course, the public would welcome more greening, because that would also provide them with more leisure grounds and for sports and so on. Well, looking at the species that you've chosen, well, many of them look very slim. So it's not very plump as you look, Chairman. And then for the public, of course, they do want tall and large trees. But then, as the officials told us before, if you want to plant large trees, then you also have to make sure that you have sufficient space and room for the roots, or else they cannot be planted. So it's not just about the GMP. You also have to look at the space available before you can grow large trees. So my question is, all right, in fact, these are already the suburban areas. So in the city, of course, that would be even more difficult. If you go out there to look at the trees, they are very slim and short. So is it because you don't have enough space? That's why you don't want to plant very tall and big trees. That's why you try to identify species that would be slimmer and so on. Because with big trees, that would also provide very good shade. And of course, you need a lot of space. And you are saying that, well, we don't have enough space for the roads and so on. And therefore, you will have to give us more space to walk on. So, is it that you're not going to plant tall and big trees and you're going to fell more trees? And then for Tsim Sha Tsui, you will try to provide more support to the big trees so that they would not fall? Director, well, I have to clarify this. We will not deliberately choose the weaker species or the very bad species. No, I think it will take time. But then without space, they cannot grow tall. But then well, some of the trees simply do not have enough space to grow. Even if they are small right now, you will also have to reserve enough space for them to become tall and big trees in the future. Yes, when you plant them, well, when you find that they are very short and slim, well, they will become larger and taller in the future. And whether or not they will provide very good shade, that would depend. And then we would not just be looking at the size above. We also have to look at the roots and how much space they are going to take up. Well, for trees that fall during typhoons, only a very small number will do that. And since 2007, we've been doing the GMPs, and for those that used to be very small trees, they have now become taller trees. And then for the themes that we have picked on this occasion, several species would be large trees. For example, I just referred to paper bark, and also for the flame trees and so on. Well, when we plant them on the roadside, we also have to ensure that there would be sufficient spacing between trees so that when they grow taller in the future, there would be sufficient space for them to grow. So when they are first planted, well, they might not look very nice, but then it takes years to plant a tree, and therefore we will have to look at the longer term. So what I was asking whether or not the policy is that land is very precious, that's why you don't have enough space for trees. But then when you go to Pat Hang and Xiang Shui, many of those trees are very tall and big. But then is it that is the government's policy that you're not going to plant tall trees because they take up a lot of space? No, as I just said, in choosing the sites in the new territories, the upside is that is already very green. That's why, well, for areas with very dense vegetation, of course, we don't need to do that. But then in the downtown area, well, the thing is there are already many underground utilities, so it might not be suitable. But then in the tourism spots, if there is more space, then we will plant more trees. For example, the banyan trees and so on. Well, in 20-30 years' time, they will become tall and big trees. All right, time's up. For members speaking in the first round, there isn't any. So second round, 2 minutes, please, because we don't have a lot of time. Gary Fan, it's not enough. 3 minutes. 3 minutes then. Chairman, you have not answered, Director, you have not answered our questions. Some of them are related to macro, others are micro issues. But then whether or not the GMP is going to succeed would depend on these circumstances. And I was asking whether or not the department has taken the opportunity so that for the underground pipes, you should have a better record, so that in the future, when you roll out such a greening work, that would become more successful. The District Council's experience is that in the past, very often, well, when you try to build or plant trees in some areas, we've been told that it would not be feasible, and then we try to have some planters, and then we try to plant trees there, and then in the end, of course, they would be very slim trees. But then all of a sudden, when the department did it, that would be successful, and you managed to open up more space. So it shows that when you provide information to the District Council, you have not been providing the full information. So in the future, I hope that you will take the opportunity to come up with comprehensive layout plans of the underground utilities and so on. You don't need to respond to that. I'd just like to give this as a comment, because this is the once in a blue moon opportunity, and whether or not it's banyan trees or flame trees or whatever. So these trees with local characteristics. So the efforts that you're put in, and also in terms of the innovation that you put in, well, 7-8 years ago, when you first introduced the GMP, well, you did that in Tsim Sha Tsui, and then in Central, you also use the color gold as the theme, and then that would make it easier for the public to relate that to the district. For example, in Central, you try to grow trees with golden blossoms, but then if you look at the different GMPs, or at Sai Kung, you try to depart from the color theme, and you try to use odor or the scent as the theme. I think that should be commended. But then well, many district councillors have been saying that the efforts that you put in have not been adequate. So whether it's sakura, blossom, or whatever, if you can have more theme planting, and the number has to be large, or else it would not be able to create the necessary effect. You can't just plant 3 cherry blossoms in a particular area and then you call it theme planting. So, well, when this paper was discussed at a panel between then and the time that you submitted it to this subcommittee, apparently not much has been changed. Can you be more creative and innovative? For example, vertical greening, and also 8 or 9 years ago, you also talk about greening Tsim Sha Tsui, so that between the parking space, you can also have small scale planting, and you also consider that, but then nothing came about. And also in some Scandinavian countries along the rail lines. In fact, along the tram tracks where there would be no pedestrians, actually you would also be using those space for greening. Sorry, time's up, Mr. Fan. Thank you for your comment. No need for response. I think the comment is very clear. I want him to respond so that we can have more tree planting, and the theme should stand out more. Well, very briefly, well, there are already guidelines that in public open space there would be more spacing in between trees. And then for theme planting, we've been doing that. For example, in Sha Tin, they would be planting a lot of dragon boat blossoms, and also they would be planting some coconut trees. So we'll be doing that as far as possible. Albert Chan, 3 minutes please. I will still be focusing on the ecology. I understand that, well, in some of these green areas, well, the administration has been using a lot of pesticides, probably because of complaints from the public. That's why in our parks and gardens there is no pests whatsoever. So there is no alternative ecology that can survive. All right, you're talking about some 1,000 trees per district, and you might also be talking about hundreds of thousands of shrubs. I think that's the way the administration goes about its tree planting policy. So you might be planting many trees, and then in a year's time, many of them go wasted. So 3 or 4 years later, many of these trees simply cannot survive because of the cramped space that they've been put in. So that's the environment in Hong Kong, and I've been criticizing that you should not be having multiple layered planting. Well, you can have up to 7 levels of 7 layers of vegetation. So you're actually going to kill these plants. So when you plant shrubs and vegetation in the different districts, have you considered the local ecology? For example, the butterflies, insects, and so on. Have you looked at those other habitats as well? Well, Mr. Han, yes, when we came up with the GMP, where there are trees, there will be birds, and where there are shrubs, there would also be insects. As to the use of pesticides, so is it that we have been using too much pesticides, so that even for the beneficial insects and so on, they would also be killed? Well, 2 weeks ago, I went to Tai Po, and I went to the nature's park. I didn't see many insects and so on, but then in Lantau, I often saw or see many butterflies and insects. So in areas where there has not been a lot of management and so on. So the terminology used is that Hong Kong is very much a green desert. Well, even if you go to the waterfront promenade or park, you can see many plants, but then you don't often see insects and so on. So that might also have to do with the greening policy in Hong Kong, because there are residents complaining about mosquitoes and so on. But then if you overdo it, then the ecology would also be damaged. So on the species chosen, whether or not there will be blossoms and also fruits, that would also constitute a large part of the ecology. Given the fact that you have so many consultants, you have spent more than $10 million on that. So in terms of the ecological development, you should also be looking into that.
A simple answer, please. I've heard the view and we'll make reference to that. Mr. Chanakan. Thank you, Chairman. I want to ask the same question I asked at the development panel. It's about the debris. I believe you still recall at the panel meeting I criticized you for creating 136,000 inert materials. 90% will be in the field bank and 1.9% will be in the landfill. Last time you didn't answer me how you can reduce the inert materials. Is there any progress in terms of reducing inert materials? If you can't answer me today, you have to answer that at the FC. I think a similar question has been answered. In our design, we try to minimize the amount of waste. There are inert materials and non-inert materials. For non-inert materials, there is only 2%, because is still a big quantity in absolute terms because of the scale of the project. We do manage the waste. We do supervise the waste management strategy. We plant trees. We need to do some digging. The materials can be recycled. Most of them can be used for other construction works. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, 3 minutes. In the urban area, trees are planted when space is available. Now, through the GMP, space may be identified for planting, which couldn't be done in the past. In the urban area, after planting trees, you also plant some shrubs beneath the trees. I don't think that's necessary. The so-called layer effect is not necessary. And you should ask the contractor to give priority to planting trees first. If you can plant trees, then you don't need to plant shrubs. The planting of shrubs can be minimized. That will help to provide space for the pedestrians. That is a better balance. You shouldn't just force them to plant 500,000 shrubs according to contract. This is a bad practice. I hope you can learn the lessons when you do the GMP in the new territories. And you should give priority to trees, and shrubs will only be planted when it is not possible to plant trees. I've heard the view. Some have made suggestions that after planting trees, not too many shrubs should be planted beneath the trees. And it may even harm the trees. We have learned that experience in doing the GMP in the urban area. We take note of that. If trees will be given priority, but there may be constraints. We'll do our best. So can he confirm that he gives priority to trees? Yes, indeed. Mr. Gary Fan, your third round, 2 minutes, 2 questions about parameters, whether that's quantifiable. Concerning greening, in the built-up areas, greening will help to improve air quality. we spent $350 million. Is there any indicator to show that there is improvement to air quality after greening? The second question. I think this is a myth. Sai Kung has a lot of greening. Now, in Lockhart Road, in Jordan Road, where population is very dense, it's not in the rural area, it's not in the villages. Greening is in densely populated area. Wen Chai and Leighton Road, they have done it well. They plant trees on central dividers. Sai Kung, 500,000 people reside, and the majority of them are living in Cheung Kwan O. Will you put more resources on greening Cheung Kwan O? You give priority to densely populated area, or you only plant when there is space? Now, concerning quantifying the effect of planting trees and reducing carbon, I don't think there is such a standard. We are not planting too many trees. If you want to reduce carbon emission, you need many, many more trees. The second question is whether densely populated areas will be provided with more greening. Yes, we do our best to plant more trees. But when you look for space, will you first consider the areas where there's a lot of population? In fact, he has already answered that. He wants to plant more trees in densely populated area. Mr. Albert Chan, in your third round, 2 minutes. I'm concerned about the high cost. 3,400 trees, 1.8 million shrubs, over $300 million. The cost is about $1,800 per plant, but some tens of dollars for a shrub, $1,000 or so for a tree. Of course, bigger trees are more expensive. So the overall cost is rather high, isn't it? I know you have to do some foundation works. You have to build the planters. I think the simple, the better. Even you go to New York Central Park, they don't look artificial. I want it to be natural. I don't want it to be artificial. If it is artificial, it is not healthy to the growth of trees. It is costly, and is not good looking. Look at our waterfront promenade. Look at the plants there. Look at the trees there. It's really unnatural. I think you need to adopt a natural approach. I hope the Permanent Secretary will look into that. Now, if you want it, the more artificial, the more they charge. That's how expert charges you. Okay, simple answer, please. I've heard of you. Why it's a bit more costly? In fact, it's not very expensive. A shrub is $25, a tree about $1,000 or so. But we have to build parapets and also other things. I've heard it. I've given my views many times before. I'll wait in the line. If time is up, I'll wait in the line. Mr. Gary Fan, the fourth round, 1 minute. Para 9. Concerning the money. A. Planting and establishment of trees and shrubs. Is it charged by the contractor for planting the trees? Now, sometimes the plant may die, and will the contractor do the replanting if the plants have died, within the 1 year of establishment period. And para 10, inadequate internal resources. Is it because of manpower? You need to spend $68 million to get the consultants. The last question first. We get outside consultants to help us. We are not able to have a team permanently. This is a simple project. We don't have enough manpower. Ms. Albert Chen, your fourth round, 1 minute. Chairman, I hope you can be more generous. If you stop us, then you just ask me to ask more rounds. It's a waste of time. I think the Permanent Secretary should consider that. I've mentioned that for many years. Every time you say you go back, you think about it, and then you repeat the same mistakes. In the Central, I gave my view. If you walk out from Star Ferry, you can see many layers of plants, and they become litter bins. You need to make it natural. And you let the experts design it, and they make it artificial. They make it many layers. Beautiful plants have become places for dumping refuse. Look at the waterfront. Just go to the Star Ferry. Look at the flower beds. It's really an eyesore. Before you go to the FC, give us a better proposal. Well, I'll raise the same question at the FC. Mr. Gary Fan, 1 minute. Answer me the first question. Will the contractors pay for the trees? Concerning inert materials, will the contractors be required to make use of recycled materials? Para 19, you say you encourage contractors to use recyclable inert materials. Is it in the contract? Well, they are responsible for providing the trees. Now, in the establishment period, if the tree dies, then they will have to plant a new tree. And the contract will require the contractor to make use of the inert materials excavated on site. They cannot do that 100%, of course. Is it in the contract? Is it just encouragement? There will be supervision. There will be consultant engineers, and I myself will watch over that. There is no contract term. Dr. Fernando Cheung, 3 minutes, your second round. Now the administration is doing the GMPs, and yet it changes land use. It cuts the trees in the green belts, turn green belts into building sites. Now you say this is in the urban area or in the built-up areas, but I see that in Tuen Mun, Yuen Long, Sha Tin Sai, Kung Chang Kwan O, Yuen Long. Why they are in the urban area? It's NT, not urban area, right? I still have a lot of questions. In number 48 report of the Audit Commission, the greening projects were checked, and there were a lot of criticisms. It's about implementation. Say the Ma On Shan greening project. Only 31% of the contract has been implemented. Say the contract mentioned 2 million plants, but actually they planted only 860,000 plants. So will there be any improvement? As for planning, there should be a lot of room for improvement. During the works period, the CEDD changed the contract. The number of plants to be planted was reduced by more than 1.4 million. In terms of changing contract terms, will improvement be made by the CEDD? I'll leave it for the other round. A minute or so remains. Concerning the GMPs, they are in the new territories. We choose the built-up areas in the new territories. They will be frequented. They are places frequented by tourists. They are on the roadsides. As for the audit report concerning the GMP, there was no audit study. I don't know what report he referred to. It was number 48 report by the Audit Commission.
So it's about the greening works done by the CEDD. I'll have to go back and check then. You also have to respond to the questions that I just asked about the enforcement of the contract and also the variation of the terms and how come there has been this discrepancy, and also about the repair and maintenance responsibility. So after completing the planting, who is responsible for maintaining that? Is it the CEDD or LCSD or whatever? Well, they've answered the question already. Well, for the audit report, I don't have the information with me. Okay. Speaking for the 5th time, Albert Chen, 1 minute, please. Well, I have several questions, Chairman. So will they give us a reply after discussion after the meeting? Because I don't want to raise that again at the FC meeting. Well, Chairman, it doesn't. Well, even if you try to block me, it's not going to work because I can always ask Leung Kwok Hong and Raymond Chan to help me. So I don't want you to just do it, and then the mistakes will be repeated again, because we've been seeing the problems for many years, and I'm sure, Chan Tat-Ming, they are aware of that, but then the problem has been repeating itself, and even the Audit Commission is getting more concerned about this, and of course this is not your responsibility, it's the other department's responsibility. But then for the problem that I just referred to, it can be seen in many districts. So I'm sure Mr. Chow Tat-Ming is aware of that. All right. I'd also like to ask about the lack of internal resources. Just now, the Highways Department said that, well, it's a relatively simple project. That's why they just did it in-house. In fact, the GMP only applied to no more than 10 districts, only about 8 or 9 had that. So is it that in the near term, you do not have plans to comprehensively roll that out to all the 18 districts? And if that's the case, then on a regular basis, you should reserve sufficient manpower. So for every, if you're spending some $68 million for 4 districts, then you should consider extending this to all the 18 districts so that it can be more cost effective. Well, for the GMP, that will be done for all the 18 districts. In the urban areas, 9 have completed. And then we have 5 more coming up. And therefore, basically, after completing this round, we should be completing another 5, and that should complete all the 18 districts. And therefore, we do not think that, we will also have a long-term, a permanent establishment to oversee all of these. Next, James Tian, asking for the first time, 4 minutes. Well, I'll not be using up the entire 4 minutes, but then, I'm concerned because I'm a developer in many of these areas, and many trees are planted, but then very often when it's contracted out, all right, it's not difficult to plant that. Well, you have 135 workers and then 37 consultants. Well, it's not difficult to plant them, but then for NT West, it's a vast area, Sha Tin, Sai Kung, Chun Mun, and all the way to Yuen Long. And then after you've planted them, I'm concerned that if you only rely on the AFCD to keep them, to trim them, and then to irrigate them. Well, you've answered the question already, but then is it like what the developers are required to do, so that you'll be keeping them for at least 3 or 5 years? Because if the trees fall afterwards, then it's not going to work. So what if they just die in a few years' time? Are we going to spend another sum of money in order to replace them with new trees? So it's about maintenance. Well, Mr. Hon? Well, as I just explained, well, there'll be 1 year's warranty period that will be done by the CEDD, and then afterwards I will be handing that over to the relevant departments, and mainly that will be the LCSD and also the Highways Department, and also the Planning and Lands department, well, a small number would be under them. Well, I don't want to drag on too much. All right, after a year's time, after you've handed them over, so according to your estimate, do they have people to irrigate the trees and also to trim them and to maintain them? Yes, we do have recurrent expenditure or money given to them for the maintenance job. So that will be done on a long-term basis. Okay, any further questions? If not, then I'll put this to the vote. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Please count the number. Those against? Any abstention? All right, majority of the members taking part in the voting are in favor, so the question is agreed. Fernando Jiang, you've raised your hand to speak. Next item. Head 707, New Towns and Urban Area Development, 770CL. Planning, Engineering and Architectural Study for Topside Development at Hong Kong Boundary Crossing Facilities Island of Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge. This is to upgrade 770CL to Cat A at an estimated cost of $61.9 million in money of the day prices for carrying out a planning, engineering and architectural study and the associated site investigation works for the proposed commercial development at the Hong Kong Boundary Crossing Facilities Island of the Hong Kong-Macao-Zhuhai Bridge. And then in 2013, the development panel was consulted. Majority of the members present supported the administration's proposal to submit the proposal to the PWSC for discussion. And then for the summary of the discussion has been tabled before members. And then with us today, we have Director of Civil Engineering and Development, Mr. Hon Chi Kang, and Mr. Mac Chi Pio, Chief Engineer from the CEDD, and Assistant Director from the Planning Department, Ms. Amy Cheung. So, for those who would like to speak, please press the Request to Speak button. And Chiang, 4 minutes, including both questions and answers. Thank you, Chairman. Well, I'd like to ask a question, and I hope that the Bureau will consider doing it. We understand that at the PWSC, very often we have government's proposal for some long-term plans, and some of these are really remarkable. But then, well, if you just tell us verbally, then in terms of the publicity effect, it's not very clear. And in some cases, you might not have expressed that very clearly. Well, sometimes I would also go to other cities to pay visits to their urban or town development. So would you consider this? That is in the amount that you've asked for. Well, I can see that well, part of it can be used for producing a video. For example, a 3D video clip, so that schools can also use that, and then they can watch the video. For example, in a particular area, we are going to build a shopping center, and some blocks will be put up, and these would be pedestrian facilities. So can we have some 3D animation and video clip, so that people will find it easier to understand what the administration is proposing to do? Because I can see that yes, this is just for a feasibility study, but I can also see that with regard to the scope of the study, you will look at the overall development concept. You will also be coming up with engagement activities and so on. So you're actually bringing this to the community. And then in terms of the cost estimates for C, D, and E, you're actually talking about some $15 million. So will you be setting aside some of that for publicity because you do not need that much contingency. You also do not have to have provision for price adjustment. In fact, you have already factored that in your cost estimate. So would you consider producing some 3D animation or video clip so that can be played or shown in the display room or schools and so on in order to tell people what you're going to do? More publicity. Director, this is a good suggestion. In fact, over the time, when we carry out our works projects, we have to have community engagement and consultation. So we would also go to the schools to introduce these programs. Well, for the video clip, yes, that can be done, and will be done. And we also have the building information model. So we do have computer simulation models. When we go out to brief people about these projects, well, that would be easier for people to understand because, we do produce 3D models. So if you can see the model on the computer, then that would be easier to explain. And then for members of the public, they would find it easier to understand what we are talking about. So that's also one of our objectives, and that would also be done for this project. Next, James Tian. Chairman, well, at the panel meeting, I've already asked about the policy issue. All right, this is a research project, and so you're asking for some $60 million. But then in terms of research work, many people, and even for council members, well, when it comes to the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge, many departments have not been able to answer these questions. I'm not sure if you're able to answer those here. All right, for Hong Kong Car Place and also Mainland Car Place and also Macau Car Place, well, for the superstructure that is built there, and if you're going to build another commercial center where there are commercial activities, there will be vehicles. So for these vehicles, where are they going to stop? Because Macau is even smaller than Hong Kong. So do we have to have a special car plate because of the limited capacity in Macau? And then for Zhuhai, and if they come to Hong Kong via Macau, then what happens to them? And if we're not able to resolve the parking problem, well, what about the expected or estimated flow? It's going to be very high according to government's projections. So are we going to build a multi-story car park, or are we going to allow these vehicles to go to Macau? Will they all have to be parked in Zhuhai? The administration has been silent in its papers. So, well, this might have to do with the policy issue because at previous development panel meetings, well, the administration had not made up its mind. And then when we asked them at the Beijing CPPCC meeting, they were also not able to answer the question. Given the high traffic flow, and if you're not able to find enough parking space for the vehicles, then for Macau, it's a very small place. And for Hong Kong public, they are already rather fed up, or they are already quite upset about this. And if you have a vehicle ID individual visit scheme, then what is going to happen? So can you tell us more about this? Indeed, that's not just about the Hong Kong crossing or Hong Kong boundary crossing facility. So can you answer that, Director? Well, it's about traffic flow and traffic arrangement upon the commissioning of the bridge. My understanding is that there will be a coordination team set up to look at the cross-boundary flow. I understand that they have not come up with a solution yet. So whatever is decided, they'll come back to consult your views. All right. All right, given the fact that this is a research study and you're looking at the feasibility of building a commercial center, so I would not say no to this, but then when you consider the proposed commercial development and what kind of a superstructure is going to be built and how it's to be built, then you would also have to look into how and where the vehicles are going to be parked. Well, of course, they will also have to consider the parking facility on Hong Kong side, and we will coordinate with the Transport and Housing Bureau. Next, Gary Fan. Well, in the Western Waters, there are a lot of habitats, and they are very they are very sensitive habitats. For example, the Chinese white dolphins, and they are very precious species. And we also have Sao and also Long-Ku-Chau Marine Park. We also have the Brothers Islands Marine Reserve and Parks. So I'd like to know, with regard to the reclamation near the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge, the way it is put in the EIA report, it says that the reclamation area will have to be minimal. So I'd like to know if the administration is going to make this change. Why is it that other than the basic facilities, there is still room for further commercial development? So is there any inconsistency? Will there be any conflict at all? So you're talking about the superstructure development, Director?
Mr. Fan, there will not be extra reclamation. Mr. Fan asked why after EIA there is still space available for the superstructure. The size of reclamation is based on the need of the Hong Kong-Macao-Zhuhai Bridge. And in the proposed reclamation area, we hope to put up more floors on top for economic development. There will be no extra reclamation, and it will not cause any adverse impacts on water quality, on the environment. Concerning 30 hectares of waters, what kind of impact? Now the artificial island is found to, or the construction works is found to exceed the area of the artificial island. And in fact, 30 hectares of extra water surface have been used, taken up to put various facilities and materials. It is not related. Yes, it is related. We're talking about the superstructure. As for the construction works and reclamation, maybe the director can answer as far as he knows. The works are not supervised by us. The works are supervised by the Highways Department. It's about during the construction period, there are some activities outside the area. It really depends on the scope of the EIA, and I really don't have the information. Can you provide us with the information? We can consult the Highways Department for you, see if we can obtain any information for you. Mr. Chen Hangpan, 4 minutes, questions and answers together. The artificial island, 130 hectares. If there is only one floor for clearance, it is a waste. The administration is going to conduct a study on how to make good use of the space, maybe on top or underground. There is no need for further reclamation. If that's the case, then we support it. As for the tourists, will they stay there, say, spend some money or have some activities? I support that. We need a study. We shouldn't just waste the space. Or if the space, provided, is not being used. I hope the administration can do some good planning. Let me now refer to a question just mentioned. Parking. We're concerned about the future traffic flow. Can their vehicles come over here, and can our vehicles go over there? If they come over here, will they remain on the island? Will they park their vehicles on the island? Will there be a super car park? Even if you're allowed to cross a bridge, or they're allowed to cross a bridge, they'll have to park their cars there on the artificial island, and then they'll have to take public transport into the urban area. I hope the administration will, can include that in the study. The second point is this. The airport railway reaches the AWE only and stops there. And there is no rail link to the artificial island, and that's not adequate. to facilitate the visitors, making use of the bridge, and also to reduce traffic into the urban, vehicular traffic into the urban area, it's very necessary to extend the railway to this artificial island. I hope in your study you will consider extending the railway onto the artificial island. The director, yes, a simple reply. We'll look at the following directions. After crossing the bridge, will they get into Hong Kong and will they make use of the commercial facilities? We'll consider that. There will be car parks on the artificial island. The governments will have to consider how the vehicles are to be directed. We will take that into account in a study. As for the link, transportation link with the artificial island is exactly within the scope of study. And there are roads, of course. Railway is a good means of transport, of course. We'll look into that. Dr. Fernando Zhang. Now, considering this proposal of a commercial development on the artificial island, have you ever considered that this is a visa-free area? The commercial facility is a visa-free facility. We have yet to come to this stage as to whether it should be visa-free or not. Whether it's visa-free or not has a very important bearing on the design, on passenger flow, vehicular flow, and the flow of tourists. You don't even have any idea about it. It's a checkpoint. It's a border crossing. This is a border crossing. Do people need to come with a visa or not, and you don't have any idea about it? Concerning this facility, it will be completed in 2016. There is an estimate of numbers from about 50,000 to 90,000. There will be growth by 2030 or 2040. It's about the general crossing. It's about the clearance procedures. That's based on our usual practice, but whether it's visa-free or not visa-free, we have not considered that at the present moment. Mr. Chang, that will affect the design of the item or the whole project. I don't understand why they don't have any idea about it. How can you proceed with the study? You want to attract adequate tourists to the artificial island in order to support a commercial development of a substantial scale. Whether it's visa-free or not has an important bearing on the success of this commercial development. People come through the Hong Kong-Macao Zhuhai Bridge, they land here, and then they go to other areas in Hong Kong for shopping, for pleasure. And you don't really need that commercial development. If you are concerned about so-called bridgehead economy, then something back in your mind is that the facility is visa-free. Otherwise, you don't need the commercial development. As in the paper, there is AWE nearby. There is the commercial area. Over there is Tung Chung commercial area. And in the airports, there are more facilities. And the third runway will not just be a runway only. There will also be commercial facilities along the third runway. We have enough commercial development over there. And there is a height control. They are going to go underground. They dig up the ground for commercial development. you need to explain to us fully. The director. Now, this has a good geographical location. After the opening of Hong Kong-Macao Bridge, people can go to Macau-Zhuhai within an hour, and then 3 hours, major cities and towns in PRD. It's next to the airport. There are good opportunities for commercial development. Say, for example, Incheon, in Korea and in Amsterdam, next to the airport, or including the airport. There are ample commercial opportunities. So does this artificial island. Ms. Albert Chan. It's about the whole development. It's really strange. It is a commercial development. In the past, there was a certain bureau which initiated the proposal, a bureau which found the need and then made the proposal to the authorities. Now it is for this is for the engineering department to conduct a study. Is it because C.Y. Leung asked you to do it and you do it? I have been following public works projects many years. It's really strange that they conduct it in this way. You have to establish the need first. Then the department will look into that. Up to now, we have not seen a specific paper on the commercial needs on this artificial island. Perhaps I'm ignorant. I have not seen any paper which says, which has confirmed the need for such a large commercial development. And what type of business mix will be there? I hope you can give me an answer. If you don't, then write a paper on that. We are also concerned about pollution. It's not just the impact on the white dolphins. In fact, they have considered this, that. It's about air traffic noise. It's also about aeroplane emissions. This site is exactly beneath the flight path. I think the noise level may be 110 or 130 decibels if you are outdoors, but I believe it is completely sealed up place, and if it's completely sealed, you need ventilation. And then the emissions by the aeroplanes, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide will be sucked in by the ventilation. So I have not seen anything to address noise and air pollution caused by aeroplanes. Let me answer the second question first. The member asked whether it is purely an engineering project. It is not an engineering project. In fact, we are working with the planning departments together. Concerning such studies, usually it is for the CEDD to seek funding, because the CEDD is the project proponent. Ms. Chang of the planning department can talk to you about planning. Now there will be an EIA for this project. We have to look at the scientific data. We have to look at the noise and air pollution. Air and noise pollution, are they in the EIA? Can you confirm that? Yes. Can you confirm that? In this project, there will be an EIA, and it will be they will be looked into. It's not possible for residential development. It may not be. It may be possible for commercial development. Ms. Chang. Mr. Chen's question is whether there is an overall planning master plan for this project. In 2007, there was the amended Lantau Development Concept Plan. It's about balancing development and conservation. Now, economic activities and major infrastructure projects could be conducted in northern part of Lantau, but there was no mention of artificial island here. Our proposal didn't or doesn't clash with this overriding principle. Planning is a continuous process. We have to deal with the latest situation. In 2006, when there was a plan, and there was no Hong Kong-Macao Zhuhai Bridge, there was no third runway. But now, with the new developments, we are given very good opportunities for developing northern Lantau, and we can develop bridgehead economy over there. And these developments to take this opportunity. We have 6 members in the line. I will extend the meeting to 11:15.
Alice Mack, 4 minutes. Chairman, we often heard that we have to develop bridgehead economy in Lantau, and therefore everywhere along that island you're going to develop commercial facilities. So apparently you're going to have facilities like Megabox or APM everywhere. And then with regard to the artificial island of the Hong Kong-Macao Zhuhai Bridge, I think this is also the Hong Kong boundary crossing. So how much room is there? And if you really develop many commercial facilities, then I'll be concerned about the traffic capacity. Because with so many developments on Lantau, what's the impact on the local traffic? So other than putting up buildings and so on, you might have to expand the scope of the study. You will also have to look at the TIA, the traffic impact assessment. So what facilities will be put up and where they are. You might need to seek further funding in the future, but then you also have to bear in mind that once these projects are implemented, then how about the public transport network and demand for public transport facilities? I'll ask Ms. Cheung to tell you more about the overall planning. With regard to the scope of the study, yes, the TIA will be done, as we all understand. Well, between 2016 and 18, well, from the Tuen Mun Chelap Kok link will pass through the airport island, and therefore, in the study, we will also be looking at the superstructure development on the airport island and what will the impact be. So precisely, this study will look into that. So I'll give the floor to Ms. Cheung. Yes, Ms. Cheung? Well, yes, as Mr. Hon just said, all right, in South Korea, they also have an air city near its major airport. So it's almost like an airport city. So looking at what they have there, they also have different commercial facilities. It's not just for leisure and shopping. For example, they have theme parks and also leisure parks and also logistics and also processing and other entertainment and office facilities. So all sorts of facilities are there. And looking at our locations here, including the northern bank of the airport island and also on the artificial island, together with the Tung Chung expanded area and also Sunny Bay, we also hope that there would also be some developments. And at these different locations, they might have their own positioning and themes. So through this study, we would also like to look at this from the commercial angle. So there'll be a commercial analysis. So at different locations, what's the best positioning? We look at that before we come up with proposals for future developments. So precisely, we have to look at this together with other studies, and there needs to be better coordination. Yes, Ms. Mack, I agree with Ms. Cheung in the sense that you're not just going to build more commercial or shopping facilities. we hope that we won't be just putting up more catering and shopping or tourism facilities. Just now you talk about a logistic facility. So in Lantau in the future, how can we take advantage of its geographical location in developing logistics facilities? Because in other areas, not many people are interested, because only when such developments are located near the transport hub or hub would they be interested. Next, Tony Chair. Thank you, Chairman. For the Hong Kong-Macao-Zhuhai Bridge, well, according to a projection, in 2016 is going to be completed. I suspect that it's not going to be like the railway project that is going to end up in chaos. So I suspect that you might. I wonder if you've conducted a study before. Apparently, there's only 2 years to go before the commissioning of the bridge, and you're talking about the study now. So I suspect that you might have conducted studies before. It's just that you might not have come to any conclusion then, and now with change in time, you are trying to come up with new ideas. So I wonder if you've engaged consultants to look into this, and you have already taken some decision, and what's the conclusion in the past. And also looking at this paper, para 9, with regard to consultancy fees, there are different categories, and there are 5 categories. But then initially, you said that you would be conducting planning and also engineering studies and so on. So are you going to engage different consultants separately? Because in the past, well, for some of these studies, you would have an overriding consultant who will be looking into all these, and the chief consultant will just subcontract it to other consultants. I do have some qualms about this, because I don't think that's the most cost-effective way of doing this, in particular when you are talking about a large-scale study. So are you going to separate it or break it down into smaller studies? And then in terms of supervision and oversight, how are you going to oversee that? So is it going to be done by Mr. Horn's department, or are you going to have one coordinating department overseeing everything? So can you provide further information on this? Yes, Director. Well, Chairman, for the previous study, I don't have the information with me, but I believe that they've already done a rough look on the artificial island. I believe that they already said that there would be commercial developments, but then whether or not they did go into the details, I'm not sure. But then can you provide information later? On the second question, when we look at this project and on the study that we're going to conduct, there are different areas, for example, planning and architectural, and even market positioning. Well, a lot of work will have to be done, but then how those can be connected and coordinated, we need to have an overall engineer or architect who will play a coordinating role. We haven't done that yet, but then after funding is approved, I suspect that we would be engaging an overall consultant who will be overseeing different teams. We will need a team working on the architectural aspect, and then on surveying and planning, we also need to have separate consultants to oversee those. So there will be smaller teams under the overall consultant, and of course, overall speaking, I'll be working with the planning director so that we will coordinate with each other. So we'll be mainly responsible for the engineering aspect, and then for the planning department, it will be looking at the overall planning and also the market issues and so on. But then generally speaking, that's the division of labor. We've been working hand in hand in many projects. But then I'd just like to say that for one consultant taking up the full responsibility, I have some reservation, because for projects like these, we don't have a lot of choices, and there should be more competition. And for some of these studies, they should have been done independently. And in terms of government's understanding of that, if that can be done separately, that would benefit the administration more. So please do consider that. All right, thank you. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you, Chairman. Well, at the development panel meeting last time, I already asked this, and I was concerned about the traffic flow, because if you look at the Shenzhen Bay link, they've only been able to achieve some 25% of the design flow. So instead of having some 40,000, you only have less than 10,000 vehicles. So with regard to this, well, for the I agree that this should be looked at in the study. But then within the airport area or boundary, are there already some planning demands? For example, if we are short of hotels by a certain margin, and if we are short of a shopping space by a certain area, so have you got those data already? So that for the artificial island, in the worst case scenario, for example, for Hong Kong-Macao Zhuhai people flow, if it's not as large as expected, but then because of the existing carrying capacity of the airport is already inadequate, and if we can place them here, then the study will not yield a result saying that we don't need all those. So I think we can be better assured if we can be provided with such information. So do you have information to show that within the airport boundary, you have already got major inadequacies or shortfalls, for example, hotel land and also shopping facilities? If you're already short of a certain amount of land, then well, can we be given that assurance? Well, I don't have the details. Maybe my colleague can supplement later. But then, as I explained earlier, we can see that at this location, is very well placed, and as I explained about its geographical location, we believe that it's good to have commercial development here. As regards what is needed by the market and what should be placed here, I think that's precisely what this study is going to find out. And at the beginning, we're going to conduct a market demand study, and then we'll be able to decide on what facilities to be put here. Ms. Zhang? Thank you, Chairman. In terms of the figures, we might not be able to have that with us now, but then on hotels, as the Tourism Commissioner has been providing a lot of data to us, well, overall speaking, in terms of hotel rooms, there is an acute demand in Hong Kong. They do not necessarily have to be located at the airport. But then given the fact that the airport has so many trunk roads, and it's also a main hub for many facilities, and therefore, if we can have more hotel facilities there, then that would also be good. Yes, I understand that, but then before the FC meeting, can the administration provide us with some basic information? For example, well, we don't have to go very far. Well, within the Tung Chung area, how many shopping centers or hotel land that we need? Well, in response to Mr. Horn's remarks just now, I'd like to remind him that we should not overestimate on the people flow or traffic flow. We should not just think that it's going to be good and then we'll just go ahead with this, because it's just like the Shenzhen Bay link. Initially, you also estimated that the traffic flow would be about 40,000, but then after 10 years in operation, basically we only have about 10,000. And of course, people flow is another thing, but then that would also reflect the actual situation on the ground. It might not have been like what you had expected. Therefore, you will have to look at the shortfall in certain uses, and then only where such data are available will you be able to plan for it. So Mr. Wu is basically suggesting that you should look at what is needed in the area. Next, Emily Lau. Thank you, Chairman. I think everything is in a mess, as some members have said. All right, in 2 years' time, you're going to commission the bridge, and now you're going to conduct this study. So the planning has not been able to catch up with the actual works. All right, in Kowloon East, we were told that you'd be coming up with the monorail, but then for the cruise terminal, well, it's completed already, but then there is no connection with the bus routes and so on. All right, you're going to do this, but then you will not be able to complete it before the commissioning of the bridge, And we also talk about visa-free arrangement and so on, and also parking and traffic impact and so on. You haven't thought about those either. So have you conducted any assessment on whether there will be demand for hotel facilities and shopping facilities? Well, you still have no idea. But then people are complaining about having too many tourists coming to Hong Kong, and we are already overloaded. So you should have thought about those, and yet you haven't thought about those. Well, you said that well, definitely you have done some studies before. Well, but then you said that you did not have the details with you, and you said that you would have to go back and find out more. No wonder our competitiveness is on the decline if that's the way you go about your business. Well, even for studies that you should have done, you haven't done it. So is there this demand? We also have the Asia Expo at the airport. All right. Initially, when it was first completed, there wasn't any business, and it's competing with the HKCEC in Wan Chai.
I asked them to let people to go there and do some selling. They have those who are calling for development of commercial development in Lantau. Have you talked to them on how to better develop Lantau, not only in terms of providing commercial space, but also provision of necessary facilities such as transport links? The questions are reasonable. We don't want to make life difficult for you. Have you considered all these matters, or you just do what's within your portfolio and other things are the portfolio of other bureaus? You don't know how many will come, and we are not in favor of allowing the mainlanders to drive into Hong Kong directly. As for transportation, after the completion of the artificial in 2016, number of visitors about 55,000 to 59,000, and then as for vehicles, 9,000 to 10,000 vehicles. There are estimates. If you don't have any assessment on the demand for hotels, for shopping, and that the retail industry is claiming that there was a decline of 40%, what's the basis of your numbers? And there is a mathematical model for these numbers. Are they related? It's purely a traffic study. Now, we've seen that there is opportunity. Next to the airport, there is opportunity for economic development. We've identified this opportunity, and the Hong Kong-Macao-Zhuhai Bridge will open in 2016. We think there are good opportunities. It's not just opportunity. You have to consider how many will come to do shopping, how many will come to stay in hotels, and you just say that is opportunity. That will be included in the study. That is in the study. Your question is right. They will have the information in the study. Mr. Michael Tian, 10 years ago, we climbed out of SARS. The central government gave us a present, the IVS. After 10 years, we now have full employment. We have continuous economic development. It's the envy of the world. And we've paid for that. We feel more crowded in our daily lives. We can't get on the public transport, means of public transport, because our public transport system cannot cope. The second problem is that we have to take more rides. The core shopping areas only sell the things much demanded for by the visitors. People's quality of living is seriously undermined. And third, I have to declare interest. I don't benefit from the IVS. I'm not the biggest. The things I sell are not so much sought after by the IVS visitors. If you don't sell drugs, if you don't sell cosmetics, you don't sell these things, then you have to move to the next street. You have to move to the next district. There are no local cafes anymore. Who is the major culprit? Our retail turnover increased by 200%, but there is no increase in commercial space. There is a serious mistake. This is my accusation. It's too late. The late spring has already come. But we still have this problem. We need to deal with the problems come about with IVS, and we need to continue to get the benefit. The best is to have a shopping area and a hotel at the checkpoint. This is the only place. Give us a decent shopping mall with hotels and don't add other things. You have to wake up. If you do that, you have to be very careful. People come over here. They don't go into the urban area. They feel that you are cheating them. They will be unhappy. You need to give them the opportunity to go to the urban area. Transportation link is very important. When I was the chairman of the KCR, I proposed there should be a railway link with the Hong Kong-Macao Zhuhai Bridge. The policy secretary said that he or she was the policy secretary. There would be no railway link. Now they are coming in tens of thousands. They come with buses. There will be shuttle buses. You bring the people here by shuttle buses. You drop them there. The only way for them to go into the urban areas is by buses. If you ask them to go to the Tung Chung line, use the Tung Chung line will be overloaded. How many bus routes will you provide bringing people into the urban area? Can the artificial island accommodate so many bus routes? The director. Transport is the number one important study. There are many suggestions said by Mr. Michael Tian. Whether there are enough bus capacity to do that, that will be in the planning. It's not only for this project. My question is very clear. Are there bus routes? Not yet. They will come after 2 years. As I said, the THB is looking into that in detail. Cross-boundary buses, there will be. That will be the replication of the cruise terminal. They don't even know whether there are adequate buses to bring the tourists into the urban area, and they don't have a preliminary impression. The THB is actively looking into that. Whether the vehicles can go into the urban area, whether there will be cross-boundary buses, they will come back to you. That will be the next step. Shouldn't you build this after they have thought it through? We're already building this island. There is already a clearance facility, a checkpoint, and we are going to put something on top. They will come in tens of thousands, and you have not considered buses to bring them into the urban area. Well, that's about the superstructure. The THB has the responsibility to consider transport. Next, Dr. Kenneth Chan. We still have Dr. Elena Wong asking for the first round and 2 members for the second round, and they are Dr. Fernando Zhang and Albert Chan. It's unlikely that we can conclude our discussion of this item before a quarter to 11. I have not asked the first round. You have asked the first round. You have asked your first round. I only have adequate time for Dr. Kenneth Chan, and we have to continue our discussion at the next meeting. Dr. Chan. Thank you, Chairman. In the planning process, this artificial island was designated to be a logistic park. There was a discussion on making good use of the artificial island. The administration now asked for money for a study on commercial development. In fact, they have made a decision. Look at airports in other places. They have commercial development near the airport. In considering this proposal, has the administration been contacted by some consortia explaining that they are very interested in commercial development on the artificial island? I have no bias against the business sector. Business is business. If there is a concrete proposal for commercial development, if it is worth discussing, it should be put up for discussion. But if the government takes a seem to be neutral stance and use our public funds for a commercial study, that's really not appropriate. Now, if it should be for the business sector to come up with a commercial study, to come up with a commercial model to meet the demands of consumers from the PRD. This market demand study should be conducted by the business sector rather than by the government. You need parameters, you need assumptions. Say members asked for traffic flow, members commented on Kai-Tak. In fact, few people use the cruise terminal. It's an empty city. And also same for the Chunwon crossing. We don't have a crystal ball. We get consultants, draw models, and make estimates. Now, we have not seen any actual demand. We just close our eyes and make a guesstimate and then put up something, and then we just treat it with a sigh. There are a lot of question marks. In fact, the CSD is considering whether the IVS visitors should be cut by 20%. A member fell to the ground, he said, but other people are clapping their hands. Now, you ask people to conduct a study, but your policy is changing, and now you say bridge ahead. Economy is just a shell. In fact, it's just a shell. It's just a smoke screen, an empty shell, and nothing else. If you know it, it's just a laughing stock. It's something to scare people away. You just say we can do this, do that, do this and do that because of the Hong Kong-Macao Bridge. There will be a huge number of people coming. Therefore, we need to have a shopping center there. You don't need a study. You have already got the conclusion. I just don't understand what sort of policy is behind it. You need a concrete policy. The best is to have consortia telling us what they intend to do on this island, and we can argue with them. But now we are just groping in the dark. Do I have time? A simple reply. The study is based on the overall economic development of Hong Kong. It is not for individual commercial interests. This is a good location. We see there are opportunities for such development. Some say it's too late. We need to start as soon as possible. If we are just still thinking whether we are going to do it or not, if we are to remain at this stage, then it's too late. That's why we need the money to start. Now you mentioned PRD demand. Western PRD demand, it seems that is for the whole of Hong Kong. Because it's only because of the bridge. You are going to facilitate people to enter this 1 hour living circle. We still have members who want to speak on this item, and we are about to end our meeting. The only thing I can do is to adjourn this meeting and continue our discussion at the next meeting. Date of next meeting, 10th of June, from 9 to 12:45 a.m. Today, we've endorsed the GMP new territory. Do members want the item to be voted separately? It's expected that it will be considered by the AFC on the 27th of June. Who would like to ask for a separate vote? No. Okay, the meeting is now adjourned. See you next Tuesday, the 10th of June.